Let's be honest, federal judges faced with Donald Trump and his abuse of power, especially when it comes to immigration and deportation, they've got to work together. They've got to coordinate their dockets. They got to read the documents filed in each other's cases. They got to coordinate like the velociraptors in the first Jurassic Park. And we've got a new example up here in breaking news. Judge Gallagher in Maryland knows all about a new document that was filed before Judge Boasberg in D.C. by the United Nations, which tells Judge Boasberg, and therefore the world, that Donald Trump and the Department of Justice have been lying to federal judges about their control of the CECOT prison in El Salvador. Because as Judge Gallagher just put in her letter, in her case involving a 20-year-old Venezuelan national named Christian, that's his alias, but he's already been outed by other mainstream media as Daniel Lozman Camargo, who she ordered to be returned by the Trump administration. They said, we don't have any control over the El Salvador prison, Your Honor. Well, somebody's lying, says Judge Gallagher in her new direction and directive to the Trump administration. Either the El Salvadoran government, in response to a UN inquiry in which they said, no, the U.S. still has control over all those people. There's a couple hundred people in El Salvador. Either the El Salvador is lying or the Trump administration is lying, but one of them is lying. They both can't be true. This is all true. You're here on Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok, traveling, but reporting. Let's get to it. So what happened? Let me just tell you the various cases and where they're located. There's 100 different plaintiffs in the D.C. circuit, the D.C. federal court in front of Chief Judge Boasberg, represented by Democracy Forward. I've had Skye Perryman on here before to talk about all her cases that her organization is handling. I'll have her back on to talk about that. Judge Boasberg's been trying to get to the bottom of whether he should be exerting jurisdiction and order the return of the 100 Venezuelans and others not named Abrego Garcia to get them back from CECOT. The Department of Justice put up a roadblock. We don't have control, you've heard it before, over that El Salvadoran prison. So he allowed discovery, trying to get to the bottom of it. Lo and behold, it turns out that the UN has been inquiring about the same thing. You know, human rights and conventions against torture are sort of their gig. And so they inquired, and they got a response from El Salvador's government, a high official there, which I'm going to read to you in a minute, that told Judge Boasberg, and it's now out in public record, that El Salvador doesn't have control, that the United States still has control over those several hundred people, including Christian, the person who's in front of Judge Gallagher in Maryland. And she learned about it, of course. Let me first read to you what the UN inquiry response reads so that you know it. Here's what the UN report shows. El Salvador, this is a direct quote from the El Salvadoran government. From the UN report about the El Salvadoran government position. El Salvador has confirmed what we and everyone else understood. It is the United States that controls what happens to the Venezuelans languishing at CECOT. Remarkably, the U.S. government didn't provide this information to us or the court. This is what the actual language was from El Salvador. Quote, in this context, the jurisdiction and legal responsibility for these persons lie exclusively with the competent foreign authorities. That's another way of saying the United States. And that was a response to the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Well, that's all she wrote. It's been confirmed. That got filed there. And that got Judge Gallagher thinking. Well, I have a Venezuelan in front of me, 20 years old, who I ordered to have his release facilitated, and I hit a stone wall and roadblock and was told to pound sand by the Trump administration that they don't have any control over it, that this is a sovereign nation of El Salvador. This is, state secrets and state diplomacy, and the U.S. president has a lot of dominion and control over that area, and it's all a lie. So she wrote a letter. But it's an official letter from a judge. And here's what the letter says in that case, which just got docketed, actually, today. Dear counsel, now I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this 35 years. I've gotten an email once from a judge and a letter twice. It's unusual. Judges usually act by order, by status conference, by get the lawyers on the phone, that type of thing. No, she wrote a letter. Because of this new information. She didn't wait for the parties to bring it to her attention. Dear counsel, This court takes judicial notice of a report on enforced or involuntary disappearances from the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights Working Group, which was filed by the petitioner's plaintiffs in the JGG case. That's the case in front of Judge Boasberg. In the report, the government of El Salvador responded to the UN's inquiry opened by 4 families about the disappearance of their family members and stating as follows: the actions of the state of El Salvador have been limited to the implementation of a bilateral cooperation mechanism with another state, that's the United States, through which it has facilitated the use of the Salvadoran prison infrastructure for the custody of persons detained within the scope of the justice system and law enforcement of that other state, United States. In this context, the jurisdiction and legal responsibility for those persons lie exclusively with the foreign authorities, the United States. The Judge Gallagher, now has her dander up, continues. In status reports submitted pursuant to this court's June 5 order, so just 3 days ago, a month ago, June 5, defendants, Trump administration, have repeatedly skirted this court's directive to provide information regarding the steps they will take to facilitate the return of Christian to the United States. Exact same position, exact same go F yourself, pound sand judge that they took with Judge Zinnes, also in Maryland, about Abrego Garcia, refusing to submit any substantive updates on a weekly basis with value. Instead, defendants have repeatedly made oblique references to their request for assistance from the U.S. Department of State, which has entered into negotiations to facilitate his return and assume responsibility on behalf of the U.S. government in diplomatic discussions with the U.S. Assuming, now here's where she says both these things can't be true. Somebody is lying to a federal judge. It's either you or it's the El Salvadoran government to the UN. Here's Judge Gallagher. Assuming the government of El Salvador provided truthful information to the UN, no diplomatic discussions should be required because El Salvador has no sovereign interest in Christians' continued confinement in that country. This court directs defendants, that's the Trump administration, Department of Justice, to explain their position that diplomatic discussions involving the Department of State are required. And she wants the answer by Tuesday, July 15th. Both of these things can't be true. Somebody's lying, and I think it's you. I mean, I'm just translating for you, but that's what's happening here. Now, what are the ramifications of it? These judges have eyes and ears. They're sentient beings. They're carbon-based. They know how to read and write. So do their law clerks, and they know that there's been a number of developments over the last 3 weeks. You've got Erez Raveni, who used to work in the Office of Immigration Litigation for the Department of Justice, received awards for doing so, 15 years in that office until Trump got in. Then he told the truth to Judge Zinnes about Abrego Garcia, that he was illegally deported and was quickly fired for telling the truth. He then submitted a whistleblower letter, 27 pages, against people like Emil Bove, who's Trump has put up for a lifetime appellate appointment, appeals court, Third Circuit. And in that revelation of the whistleblower, he said, and he's believed by everybody that knows him, he's a truth teller, he's honest. Those that work for him say he's a Boy Scout. He's an Eagle Scout. He would never tell a lie. And he said in there that he was ordered to not tell the truth to federal judges in this position, to lie to them, to delay them, to obfuscate, and to tell them to go F themselves effectively. I mean, that's the quote. And he threw Drew Ensign, who appeared before a lot of these judges, under the bus, who was his boss, and said he did not tell the truth to federal judges. Separate investigation being conducted related to that. But everybody saw it. Everybody knows what's going on in Judge Zinnes' courtroom with Abrego Garcia. Yeah. She's got a new hearing this week as well because she didn't believe her Department of Justice lawyers in front of her. She told them that tell me all the steps you're going to take and how you're going to remove Abrego Garcia, when you're going to remove him from when you get custody of him, and what are the steps you're going to take and the procedures and the notice you're going to give. And when she didn't like the answers in court, she said, all right, then you're going to bring a witness into the witness box. You're going to swear them in, and they're going to testify in front of me, responsive to questions from me and others about all of those procedures. That's how Judge Zinnes in Maryland is handling it. Judge Gallagher, similarly this week, wants a response from the Department of Justice as to why and to explain how she has not been lied to. See, a lot of judges would have done this by order to show cause. I would have done it by an order to show cause. Really put their feet to the fire. The letter, though, she said at the end of her letter, despite the informal nature of it, we're going to docket it as a communication from the court, which I would not screw with, by the way. It's an order from the court. But you see what's happening in Judge Zinnes' courtroom, you see what's happening in Judge Boasberg's courtroom, and you see what's happening in Judge Gallagher's courtroom. And what's the common denominator? Donald Trump is telling them to pound sand. He's not respecting their rulings. He's banking on being bailed out by the United States Supreme Court. Not yet, Donald. Not yet. And I will report back here on Legal AF later this week about what happens and what the Trump administration files, if anything. And the hearing, I'm sure Judge Gallagher is going to pull together relatively quickly. As I said at the top of the hot take, the way judges usually operate is telling their bailiff or their clerk, get the lawyers on the phone now. You know, I've been in dinner because I wasn't expecting a phone call when a California federal judge at a different time zone wanted an immediate status conference and hearing on a matter. And, you know, what do? You step out of dinner quickly. You know, the mailboxes in Manhattan became a very convenient workspace for me. Put my papers on. I had my file with me, and just in case. And that's how it works. And that's what she's going to do. And we'll follow it right here. Legal AF. If you like this kind of content, hit the free subscribe button. We don't have a paywall. We don't have outside investors. You're it. You're it. Hit that subscribe buttons and hit the reminder so you always get all of these videos. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touches Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.